Councilman, thanks for taking some time to chat with us. Initially, I mean, you are from here, raised here, you have a unique background. What made you say, I want to be the next mayor of Kansas City?
Well, my mother raised my brothers and I here. There's 5 of us, and we were house to house a lot. At one point, we were even homeless right in the heart of this city. And she instilled a great sense of values in all of us and trying to make a difference in the community and the world around us. The first in my family to get a college degree and also a master's degree. And I frankly rolled up my sleeves when I first ran for office at the age of 25, when I returned home from school and wanted to make a difference and was elected to the city council as the first person in city history at the age of 25 to be elected to the city council. And so during that time, I obviously have made a great deal of difference on the city council, from my work with KCI Airport and leadership there, and work with eliminating food deserts right in the heart of the community, where we have 2 grocery stores along the Prospect corridor at 39th and Prospect, then also at 31st and Prospect. And for me, if I could run for city council again, I obviously would run for city council. I made a lot of difference right in the heart of this city, representing the 3rd district. But since I can't, I am running for mayor. And part of that is because there's much work to be done. When we talk about reducing violent crimes in this city, we have issues of crumbling infrastructure that needs to be addressed, and our basic city services need to be enhanced. Our city is not perfect, but it certainly can be, and I want to be sure to continue to serve as a leader and helping move a bold agenda forward for the city for the years to come.
Where do you stand on pre-K? That is also on the ballot. It's been a hot button issue. Will you vote for it or against it, and why? Depending on whatever
I certainly applaud Mayor James in pushing pre-K forward. This is something that is certainly needed. I know firsthand, of course, what education can do in the life of an individual. My mother, who raised my brothers and I, she continued to instill the importance of education, and starting at a very early young age. Been the first of my family to go off to college and graduate. I know how important that is. I have young cousins and nieces and nephews who live in this community that are in preschool, and it is important to me to ensure that they are moving through the system and educational system in a very important, unique way of learning and understanding, reading, writing, comprehending, mathematics, so forth and so on. And so while I think the mayor's initiative is one that is certainly admirable and one that we need to be focused on, unfortunately, given the mechanics of it, it's not something that I'm able to support. And here's why. There is a 3/8 cent sales tax that we are promoting from this actual tax that is before us. I think that it's a regressive tax. It's for central city economic development. And we have a 1/8 cent sales tax that has been used in locations throughout the city for central city's sales tax. That should be used for economic development in our community. And the tax that we have before us is one that all 14 school districts, unfortunately, do not actually even support the tax as it is written. And while I think, again, this is an important initiative, it is pretty much buried in sort of the mechanics of it about how do we actually roll this out. If you drill down a bit further, the Kansas City public school system has not had a mill levy increase since 1966 or 1967. There should be a mill levy increase so that they can be able to help promote education through the lens of the Kansas City Public Schools, and then also just within that their actual boundaries. All the other school districts, from my knowledge, have, and it's important that we have our superintendents and the school districts on board as we are trying to move forward with this very important initiative. The city, as you know, is not necessarily responsible for education because of the different school districts that we have, but it's important that we do have a comprehensive plan that is holistic, that everyone can actually agree with. And right now, as it stands, unfortunately, we do not. As mayor, I would hope to, if this passes certainly to be able to enforce it the best way that we possibly can. But if it doesn't, I want to roll up my sleeves and work with all of the superintendents throughout this entire city to ensure that we have a comprehensive pre-K plan for all of our young people in this entire city, and try to figure out how do we really ensure that the next generation is prepared through education at a very early age of pre-K. And that's something that I plan to certainly work toward. And come April 3rd, I plan to work hard, of course, one way or the other, to ensure that we can actually still do this.
Let's transition to crime. There's no silver bullet to solve crime in any city.
That's a way to put it as well.
So,
no pun intended, I'm sure.
Right. What do you think are some solutions or existing solutions that need to continue or be implemented to continue to try to reduce crime?
Well, here's the reality as it relates to violent crimes in this city, is that there is no one-size-fit-all solution. This is something that we in this entire community should be upset about when there's a loss of life of a loved one that has been killed due to gun violence in the city. And so there are a number of things that I think that the next mayor and the city council should be focused on when it comes to this. One of the things that my administration would be doing is trying to work with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department to ensure that we have community policing. And I'm not just saying community policing from a very buzzword standpoint. I'm talking about how do we actually work to ensure that our officers are just focused solely on policing and working within the actual communities that they are assigned to and or live in as well. We've got to make sure that they're doing that, number one. But number two, we also have to address it from a very mental health related field. We understand, and a lot of the work that I've done with the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime and working with Alvin Brooks and many other of our community stakeholders who really are on the front lines of this, I understand that there are some ways that we can't just continue to say that gun violence is happening between young people. It's happening between all ages, and individuals sometimes don't necessarily know how to handle their problems, and we've got to figure out conflict resolution for them and figure out ways to be able to address some of the mental health issues that many people have. And so providing them that those resources is certainly key. And then the third thing I think that this goes around to is education becomes extremely important as well, because one of the things from my work with the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime that I have realized is that in our review and our statistics, it basically shows that 80% of those who have had some sort of interaction with violent crime in this city do not have a high school diploma. And so we've got to make sure that we are doing everything we can from a very holistic standpoint to address this matter in all parts of our entire city, and working with individuals to be able to solve this so that we don't have a cycle of socialization that continue to plagues itself in many families throughout this entire city, because it becomes a very rippling effect. But it's something that we as a community have to really roll up our sleeves and work hard. You know, for me, having lost a loved one due to violent crimes in the city, I know firsthand what this means to a family. And then, of course, I think just as a city, we also should realize that these are just not numbers on the paper, folks. These are real citizens who unfortunately have lost their lives, and we've got to do everything that we can. Yes, we've got to be outraged. Yes, we've got to be able to ensure that we're providing the resources to KC Nova. Yes, we've got to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to work with all sectors of this community and persons that are on the front lines. But we also got to continue to provide real hope for everyone in our entire city. And that's what this boils down to for me. And as mayor, I want to make sure that I'm working hard to be able to address this, because this is our #1 issue that we really need to be focused on. We could talk about a lot of things that are going on in this entire city, but at the core of our city, it's neighborhoods and making sure that people are put first, and ensuring that they realize that the government can do so much more to impact their daily lives.
Let's transition to infrastructure. A lot of people right now, and crime is important, a lot of people right now might be focused on trying not to pop a tire. You're right.
Yeah, I had my pop. You know.
What do you think moving forward as the next leader of this city, if you're granted that, what will be some infrastructure priorities for you?
Well, hopefully, if elected the mayor of this city, I'll be the 46th mayor of Kansas City, a position that I certainly will hold dear and work extremely hard every single day to move our city forward. One of those major issues that are at the forefront of all of us 365 days out of the year is our infrastructure. And we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to be able to fix our crumbling infrastructure, so our curves, our sidewalks, our bridges. Unfortunately, I've had an encounter where my car, the front axle, has actually been broken off, and I had to get it fixed at the dealership, obviously. But I think that many people want to be able to ride along smooth streets and asphalt that is paved smoothly, and so that you don't have to have that type of experience that I have encountered over the past couple of months here. And we've got to be able to fix our potholes. We've got to be able to fix our crumbling infrastructure. And we also have to ensure that we're putting the type of resources that are needed for our street preservation in our actual funds. Currently, as it stands, over the past 8 years, there have been a decrease in our actual street preservation funds that the city manager has rolled out to the full city council. I've continued to fight every year to ensure that we had the adequate resources to be able to address this. And this year in the city budget, there will be $17 million that we will be able to have in our street preservation. But we need nearly $40 million a year to be able to address much of our infrastructure in this city. We, of course, have the general obligation bonds that the citizens have approved in the city. But we also need to be able to have additional resources to address this all throughout the city as well, to make sure that folks are able to have sidewalks that you're able to walk along or walk on. And we have to be sure that we're able to pay close attention to our bridges. The Buck O'Neill Bridge is one that's in real need and repair, and we've worked hard as a city council to ensure that there are resources. But we also need the other municipalities in the state to be able to help us with the type of resources to be able to repair the actual bridge. And so this is a federal, state, and city issue that we have a community in the region that we're all able to benefit from greatly, where we're able to have a very good infrastructure in this city. And as mayor, I want to serve as a champion and lead this city in that conversation to be able to address some of these very pressing issues.
The last topic, incentives. Some people say they have a time and a place to hopefully spur development in certain areas of town, and then some say a lot of incentives for companies or businesses that come in could take away from other resources that may need funding. Where do you stand on incentives, and do you feel like they have a time and a place depending on the environment or depending on where the city is at a certain time?
So yes, incentives are extremely important to building our community. There is a very important clause in any sort of TIF that says "but for," and we have to be very intentional, ensuring that we're equitable with all of our types of incentives that are certainly needed, and using them where they are needed the most. During my tenure on the city council, I have worked extremely hard to ensure that places that need TIF are actually able to receive TIF. A good example is the grocery store at 39th and Prospect. I've worked extremely hard to ensure that grocery store was able to receive the type of cents and the TIFs and incentives that they certainly need for that project. And even at 31st and Prospect, we've done the same thing. And so those are areas of town that need them the most, but there are areas of town that you could probably look at and say, well, maybe that's not the best use of our actual incentives. But we also have to ensure that we're working with our local school districts to ensure that they have a seat at the table, and that we're working in conjunction with them to address the type of incentives that are maybe needed so that there is that real benefit. But also, as mayor, I want to make sure that I'm appointing people to the tax incentive boards to ensure that we have people that will be looking at this from a very equitable lens, and one way that we can really have shared sort of alignments as it relates to this, so that we're being very fair and equitable across the board. And we must do that to continue to move our city forward.
30 seconds or less, why on April 2nd should people check the box that says Jermaine Reed? On
April 2nd, I'm asking for voters to consider me as a candidate for mayor for this great city. Over the past 8 years, I have worked extremely hard to bring opposing sides together, and I've been laser focused on improving and enhancing the quality of life for every single person in this city. I think that my track record of work over the past 8 years serves as an example of how I will certainly lead this city as we move forward. Being able to address a number of those key issues by reducing violent crimes in this city, been able to address much of our crumbling infrastructures, and also been able to provide basic city services for all citizens throughout this entire city. And so on April 2nd, I ask for citizens to vote for Jermaine Reed in ensuring that we can continue to move forward and put people first here in Kansas City.
Councilman Reed, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.